Okay, it is 5 o'clock on July the 18th, 2022. We're going to call to order here. The BEDC Board reserves the right to convene into executive session at any time during the meeting regarding any agenda item in compliance with the Texas Open Meetings Act, Chapter 551, Government Code. Number 2, public comments. Do we have any public comments today?
No, sir, we do not.
Okay, very good. Well, then we're just going to jump right into the agenda here. All right, 3, regular business and presentations. 3.1, approval of the meeting minutes from the BEDC board members of June the 20th, 2022, and the special board meeting of June 27th, 2022.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as indicated in the package for both meetings.
Second.
All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, all those opposed? Very good, motion carries. Okay, 3.2, receive financial report provided by the City of Bastrop's Chief Financial Officer for the period ending June 2022 and Treasurer's comments. So,
Tracy, do you have any additional comments or anything related to the? Okay. So the report is as indicated. There is a additional sheet at the last, I think that's page 17, per the request made at the last meeting to include the status of the payments being made to Steve Weathers with respect to consulting. So as you see there, the budget amount is $12,500 per 7 months, or $87.50 to date. $37,500 has been paid, 42.9%, and a budgeted amount for travel expense, and we're about halfway through on the estimated travel expenses for Mr. Weathers. On the lower half, there was also included the Jorgensen's consulting fees. Jorgensen's fees, as of date, has been only paid the initial amount of the 3 split payments so far, and any of the additional expenses were only at $450 of the $10,500 estimated. So that's the status of where we are on those 2 per the request.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you like to have that updated each month from now on?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thanks.
Until the conclusion of the contracts. Thank you.
great, thank you very much. Okay, on 3.3, actually it's kind of a dual thing, it's a doubling thing here. We're actually going to have a workshop discussion on 4.0, so what I'd like to do is to go ahead and move the presentation from Mr. Weathers down into number 4, if that's okay with everybody here. All right, very good. All right, moving to 3.4, receive presentation and updates by Doucette & Associates Engineering about the infrastructure project in the Bastrop Business and Industrial Park.
Hello again.
Hi.
David Spiker, in case y'all forgot who I was.
No.
Do we have the exhibit to show or no? Oh. Okay, well, the update is pretty simple. We're going forward. We found out, I think the last time I was here, I told you that we can get the sewer to go underneath the gas lanes, which means we don't have to use a siphon or a lift station for this first phase, which is really great news. We've contacted the utility companies, the power easements, and the gas easements to start making sure we're getting all the agreements with those guys worked out. And we're about 60-something% done with the actual roadway design itself. So, oh, that's the presentation. I have some little exhibits to show you all if you want to. Just wait for them, they'll pop up.
Chair Spencer, may I ask a question? I noticed that, and I'm on page 22. I know that may not mean anything to you on the packet, but the page that has the cross-section, I see that there is a detail for the spill and catch curb detail that's the City of Bastrop, and your document says that these aren't for construction, that they're progress. But I noticed that the cross-section was a 38-foot pavement, and I don't recall that being a standard City of Bastrop cross-section.
It's not. It doesn't match your manual. What it does, I was told by your engineer to match the existing road. And it does not match and I plan on turning in the 60% plans, and when I do, if that changes, all we gotta do is change a typical section and run it through we have open roads, so it's not gonna take much to change it. So that's why I hope to get feedback at the 60%. What do you guys really want? We didn't put sidewalks out here yet either.
Okay,
And
excellent.
I know your details show that.
Right. And then the other question that I had on the following page, it shows the wastewater manhole to be in the center of the cul-de-sac. And I didn't know if you were making any assessment, because obviously we don't want to tear up the pavement to connect to the
I've
manhole.
already relocated them.
Okay,
I have.
thank you.
It's-
Just
it's-
going by the packet.
No, it's just a work in progress. I got everything out of the road, even the water. I pulled it out of the road. Some cities want the stuff in the road. I've always been a proponent of, if I could put it in a parkway, it's a lot easier and cheaper to get down and fix it.
Absolutely. And I'm, whatever the standard is, that's fine for you guys to work out. I just noticed that the water lines had gone to the property lines, but there didn't appear to be a wastewater service to that wastewater manhole. And I just wanted to make sure that we'll get that taken
Yeah.
care of so that
Yeah.
we're not finishing the cul-de-sac and then coming back and
Now,
tearing up the pavement.
I'm actually gonna bring the sewer line all the way to the south side of our road and bring it all the way to the edge of the cul-de-sac. That way, and make it deep, because it's going to be deep anyway. That way,
Sure.
the property to the east will be able to sewer into that manhole.
Excellent,
And
excellent.
then run a service line up to the Mocha property from there.
Thank you very much. I knew they were in progress,
Yeah.
but there were just a couple
But
quick
what you see
questions.
there was really a 30%, guesstimate at first, and then we pulled everything out. But yeah, great questions. That's why you're
Thank
an
you.
engineer, right?
The one question, the engineer, that you said stay with the original design of the roads.
They
the
told
width.
me to match the existing Jackson
Which
Street.
engineer, was that the city engineer?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
The-
and that makes sense.
Trey,
It makes complete sense to maintain
It
the
does, but,
existing design. It doesn't make much sense for a short road to go 40 feet when the truck just moves 300 feet
Yeah.
down and it's on 38,
but,
so.
just so you know, for us, it's not very difficult at all to put in a
Right,
different.
but
typical
for
set.
us, it's 4 more feet over 400
It
feet is
was,
another
yeah.
1,600 square feet of
No, that's right, it's more money.
investment
It's more money.
only to connect to a smaller road, so, okay,
Yeah, And I
good.
think even on our first thing, we don't even have curb and gutter, because there's no
Yeah.
curb and gutter on the original.
Right.
So, but
Yeah.
if they want that, we'll be glad to do it.
All right, thank you.
All right, I think, were we still up, right, for the next one? That's all I have, unless there's any more questions. We're up for the next 2 items on your agenda, though, so I'll just hang out up here with you.
Yeah, that'll be fine. Let's go ahead and move on then to the 3.5, and that's the presentation, consideration, and possible action on Resolution R 2022-0008, approving a proposal by Doucette and Associates for additional environmental services related to the Jackson Street Extension Project. Take it away.
Yeah, so I have Bonner here with me. He can come on up. So the first phase we did, I think we had like $10,000 in our contract to do an environmental assessment. And we've done that. We actually still have like $3,000 or $4,000 left. So we're gonna roll that over into the next stuff. But that was to find out what all we have to do and go out and do some site surveys and investigations and things of that nature. And we were successful in determining that there's no toads out there. So the next step is to please all the agencies that we have to please. And you want to speak to that? 'Cause I try to be an engineer, not an environmental person.
And I try to be an environmental, not an engineer. So I'm a new face to y'all. I am Bonner Watson. I got hired recently, about 5 months ago at Doucette for the environmental science position. I'm standing in for our project manager, Sarah Weber, today, who I believe y'all have spoken to before. So to kind of run it down, this is listed as critical habitat by the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, but that does not necessarily mean that there's presence of toads in the area. So we have to do presence, absence, and a habitat assessment, which we did perform with a wildlife biologist. And she determined, which I believe y'all have discussed this before, that it was just not fitting habitat for 4 or 5 different reasons based on topography, soil composition, fire ant presence, and just vegetation in general. However, Fish and Wildlife Service, to take something off of critical habitat, requires 3 years of absence, which is the presence and absence. So what we're proposing is to put out acoustic recording devices around any delineated wetlands, which we would also need to delineate, that are part of the waters of the U.S. as defined by the Corps, the Army Corps of Engineers, which both Sarah and I are certified to do, and we are on an a native purposeful take for recovery permit within the Fish and Wildlife Service, so we're qualified to do both of those services. And what we would like to do is put out these acoustic recording devices that record the sounds around these potential water areas, and we can match the sound signature and the audio signature to databases via Freedom of Information Act requests to get the specific sound frequencies of Houston toads. And so you have that audio data saying that we didn't find any, you have our physical data of this is not proper habitat, we did not find any toads out here, and then you'll have the audio data saying that even when no one's out there, even if we can't see them, they are not out here, and we have 3 years of data to prove it, and the Fish and Wildlife Service will take that off of critical habitat, or at least we'll be able to develop in those specific areas.
Well, let me ask a question here, okay? Because, I mean, obviously, that's an extremely long period of time to try to get something off of it when we already know this is potentially in the Houston toad habitat. So why is effort being put in to take something off of that, which doesn't make sense, at least in my mind? Why is it that we just can't get a letter from them that says, you have taken a look at it, there appears to not be any Houston toads here, you guys are okay to build on? I mean, to me, personally, I've built in the Houston toad, and that's what I had to do also. And it's like, no, there's no toad here, go ahead and build. So I'm just curious as why we're not looking at that.
So from my understanding, it's that we did coordinate previously with the Fish and Wildlife Service, and that it's also in conjunction with the Lost Pines habitat area. I think they're wanting that absence survey, that absence confirmation that we are 100% sure that there are no toads in there, or at the very least, if there's an incidental data of there being, like, let's say we find one toad out there in 6 months. We can say that's not representative of the population. That doesn't mean that they're going to be there. It's a floater, you know, something that won't really actually affect, that development won't actually affect their population. That there's a bluff out there, it's like 60, 70 feet tall, that really cuts off, it's a geographic isolation, makes it to where we're not probably gonna see anything out there, but the thing is, appeasing the Fish and Wildlife Service is the big deal. And so having that confirmation and that absence is what we're...
Okay, I guess you kind of answered it. We're basically trying to get a letter that says there's no toads out there, but we're not having you go and try to take the toad off the list, right? Am I understanding that right?
We're not trying to delist the toad from the Endangered Species
Okay,
Act.
all right, I just want to make sure.
Is that what is, okay, yes. So, and that's the big deal, is this is all Endangered Species Act from 1973, I believe. So yeah, so that's the big one for us.
Okay, great.
I had a question related to the toad acoustical monitoring. The dates say on or before February 1st, ending in on or following April 30th. So are we, if we approve this, is this planning to start now, or would you wait until February to start, or what are the dates specific to this?
I would have to look at specifics on that. We would probably, once we get what specific audio acoustic recording devices that we would be finding on that. And I'm also taking the notes I'm having from today and what I'm saying today and bringing it back to Sarah to bring y'all any extra information that we need on specifics of those recording devices. But we would hammer out a plan on getting it either as soon as possible or as soon as relevant. Because if there's a season where it's not relevant to have it out there, we're not going to have it out there for y'all.
Or we could build the road during the season they're not there. Possibly.
That's why I went private, because I don't want to deal with the government stuff.
Got it.
Mr. Gossett, I'm going to chime in here just from a historical perspective. I believe those the testing has to be done during the Houston toad breeding season, which those dates align with, to my recollection. So I think that's why they're suggesting February through April.
Yeah, so we would want the recording devices out there recording during those time frames, but whether it be more cost effective or convenient to have them out immediately, or whatever the case may be, we would have to hammer out logistics. Sarah probably already has some of that stuff.
So, and timing-wise, if we build the road, does that mean we do nothing until after April, until we get the results back and until we get something back from the government that says we can play in the dirt?
Well, that will be helpful too with the wetland delineation, because a big thing that is really going to be kind of what hinges this for the Fish and Wildlife Service is that waters of the U.S. We don't think that the water that's mapped out there is going to be problematic just based on its connectivity. It's ephemeral. It ends at a certain spot. There's no nexus that we know of. But we have to go out there and look and delineate it, which, like I said, Sarah and I are both certified to do. But I also want to say that and like I said, I have the specifics for this in another file, but I think a lot of it has to do with just buffer zones. So creating a 200 or 300 foot buffer depending on what type of development is being made over there.
My question was about the diameter, the range of influence for the audio devices. Well, I'm trying to find out if this study can cover more than just this road, since they were also talking about the rest of the park. Is there any way that we can maximize this and leverage it for a greater area than a 80-foot wide right-of-way?
Oh, I'm sure. It would depend on what specific unit logistics we're getting. Since DUSET does not develop these units, or our environmental department doesn't develop these units, we would be purchasing them or contracting them from whoever makes these units. So it would just depend on what specific units we're buying, what devices we're buying and putting out there. But that can be discussed. We can try and look at something that has a wider range. I would assume that most of them have probably a pretty standard range that they're looking at.
Mayor, our goal is to free the whole property up.
Thank
It's
you.
not gonna be just.
Because I can't tell that by the way the amendment's
Yeah.
written, but I am hoping that we're
Yeah, no,
leveraging
That's our
that.
goal, and also the road, I don't know if y'all remember, but the last time the road stops right before the habitat. So we can go out there and dig up the road and do everything we want there. There's no issue with building our road at all. That's, the other thing, just, if you wanna pull your hair out, the soils are not favorable for these toads. There's no water, there's fire ants. I mean, everything out there says that there's no longer any toads. Not that they never were out there, it's just they're not out there now. So even though we preach this to the environmental sections, they still told us we have to do X, Y, and Z.
And that's the basic thing with the Fish and Wildlife is they, like I said, they had it listed as critical habitat, and they don't like to take stuff off critical habitat unless they absolutely have to. So yeah, like everything that we've gotten between fire ants, topography, vegetation, everything, we do not expect to see any toads out there, and if we do, it'll be very incidental, kind of like the floater situation I was talking about.
Let me,
Yeah, I just, the way the letter's written, it says the Industrial Park Jackson Street Extension, and I don't want us to get caught in government. That's what it was labeled, and so you can't apply that to the rest of the park. That was I just want to make sure we're leveraging the study.
We should be taking care of the entire project, yeah.
okay, then
Go back and modify it.
to re-clarify, if we could have you're asking for $16,000 more, first of all, right? That's what the proposal is
That's
for
the
this?
proposal, yes.
Okay. Then perhaps rewriting the proposal that clarifies that is the entirety, so that we know specifically it covers everything, so that we don't have an issue in the future. If you would do that, I think that'd be great, right?
Yeah, we can get the verbiage changed.
Okay.
I was just going to ask about the physical attributes of the property. Those aren't likely to change in the coming years as far as
No.
the toads are concerned. What's the upside in the acoustic 3-year plan?
Proving that having another form of audio data or no site data for the Fish and Wildlife Service saying we're not there, or that they're not there, because they say, oh, you went out there one day or a couple days and you had eyes and you didn't see anybody out there, didn't see any toads out there, but what about nighttime? What about this? What about when you're not there? It's red tape through the Fish and Wildlife Service, essentially.
Thank you. Okay, thank you.
I think we could have started with red tape.
That's, yeah.
Okay. So I would make a motion to approve the resolution R 2022-0008 for $16,000 additional for Doucette, with the condition that the offer is modified to include that the toad study and acoustical is to cover the entire remaining development part of the industrial park. Is that,
That's correct. yeah.
Yes, sir? Yep.
I make that motion.
Second. All right, so we're going to have a little discussion here. Charlie, is that something that we can do? We can approve this resolution and still waiting on the proposal from them?
Sure, subject to.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All right, then, all in favor? Aye. All opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Thanks for your time.
Not going anywhere.
I'm not going anywhere, he is.
Okay, we'll move on to 3.6, presentation, consideration, and possible action regarding a proposal by Doucette and Associates for completion of the southern portion of the Bastrop Business and Industrial Park to provide shovel-ready sites.
So I believe you guys all received a proposal in your packet. Okay. Oh. And that's the Jackson Street. Can we show the whole? There should be a slide in there for, yeah, that's it right there. So the remainder of the property is all pretty much south of the extension we're taking off of Jackson Street. That road, by the way, still is called unnamed. So we got to figure out a name from you guys. You got to give me one sooner or later. So our proposal is designing all the streets that remain along with this, along with a lift station, because we're going to have to now put it in a lift station for the remainder of the property to sewer it. Water mains also included. The drainage studies were part of our original scope, but the drainage designs for all the streets and wherever we're going to put everything was not. So drainage is also included. Our biggest task out here really is going to be grading to try to balance this site and minimize the cost for, because I think what you guys really want is for developers to come in here and see these properties ready to roll, and all they got to do is build on them. So we're going to do, like any other development we work on, we're going to do a full site grading on this property. It's, as you know, it's full of a lot of ups and downs, and it's some rough terrain out there. So it's going to be a little difficult to manage that along with the drainage, make sure we don't really change any of the drainage up. But that's what this proposal is for. It's for the full site development of the remainder of the property. Unless you guys want me to read through this and bore you to death.
No, it's okay. Pictures are good. One of the questions, a couple of questions with the ponds in particular. In the triangular portion above the road, there's a small triangular pond showing up in there. Is that not already part of the land of, no, not that one. The one further up and to the right, I think it's Pond C.
On the one on Mocha property.
Isn't that on Mocha's
Yeah,
property?
that's Mocha's property, that's
Okay.
correct.
But under the agreement, isn't Mocha doing their own?
Yeah, and
ponds?
Mocha, by the way, we just sent them a proposal to do their development as well.
Okay, so does it or does it not include Pond C, the estimate?
No, your estimate does not.
Okay.
What I used there, when we did the zoning scheme, we had to show all the stuff for all the parcels.
Understood.
So
I
that's
just
why-
want to know if
yeah.
Pond C was in the estimate or not.
Yeah,
Okay,
it is
correctly
not.
not in it, okay. The second is, in the other sets of ponds, is there, what happens is the center one on the bottom, I think it's Pond A, essentially makes all that land useless. That block becomes useless for any
no.
development.
So-
But on the upper left, there's a Pond B that takes a block out of that area, no, upper right there. Is there any way that we can do away with Pond B to make that block more viable by either increasing or adjusting to get into Pond A?
Yeah, so essentially when we did this schematic, we did a 30% conceptual drainage is what was required. And they wanted me to give them an idea of the sizes that are going to be required out here. So I did it based off the way the water was flowing and put them there. But once we get into the grading this whole property and redoing all this, we're going to maximize the amount of area that's developable and minimize these ponds as much as possible. And they're most likely are not going to be where you're seeing them now, because now we're going to have the full-blown grading plans where we're going to regrade the whole property out there. I also know that we have a 75-foot buffer on the south side, which doesn't show on this map because it wasn't a part of it when we first came in to get approval from the zoning board. So there's a 75-foot tree buffer. We have to leave all the trees for 75 feet alone along that bottom south. So that pond can't go where it's at, the big one you talked about. So to answer your question real short, we're going to rethink all the ponds. And the layout's pretty much going to stay the same with the roads because that's what they want. That's what everybody wanted. So we'll just have to figure out how to get the best and maximize the most use of the properties. And so your question's very valid. We don't want to wait to take up a whole thing. We might be able to make them deeper so they can store more
Right.
water, things of
Yeah,
that
prefer
nature.
not to have a lot of little ponds around because then the toads might come. But, you know, honestly, shallow ponds are an issue. If we can go back into minimizing the square footage or footprint of ponds,
Yeah.
that would be a great help for the value and the development. Okay. As well as whether we put it there or we stuff it in the lower left corner where wherever you've got a tight angle makes it extremely difficult to construct. So anything that can be like in the lower left corner of the development where it says projected lift station, anything along that line,
Yeah.
that piece of land is more difficult to develop than the block that it's in, so.
That's right.
So we'll be able to look at that and have a chance to review that. Okay, thank you.
I think as we get going on this, I'll still be coming here and giving you guys updates, and if you guys have, questions as we move along with the design of it, then we'll be able to make changes, or I can at least give you more informative answers of why this and why that.
So, Bill, is this looking at their proposal there on page 32 or 33, something like that? You've reviewed that. We've talked about that in our budget meeting, right?
Yeah, we talked about it in the budget meeting. I think we originally had 5 or 6 million in our thoughts, not 13 million. But it's not surprising that the costs keep going up and the study is happening. At least we have engineers looking at it as opposed to just driving by in the truck and looking at it. I think the other part of it is that it's still in line with our plan of making this block of land shovel-ready. And if we need to make it shovel-ready, this is what's going to make it of more value for development. Otherwise, it's just going to sit. It does look reasonable, but I do think that the leadership and decisions and decision-making of the build-out of this needs to have a person or a couple persons from the BEDC sitting specifically with Doucette in the development of a $13 million project and not just be left at its own whims of design, so that we need to have somebody from BEDC sitting on that reviews and helping Doucette with what can be done and what would be done.
Okay, well, this particular proposal is right under $2 million, right? It's $1.9 million. And refresh my memory, how long is that scope of services for?
To design all this,
Yes.
I think we got 8 months in here.
8 months?
Yeah.
Okay.
But here's the other thing, did I answer your questions? Okay.
Yes,
I
you
wanted to
did.
give you
But I don't think that's an accurate answer, because your 1.9 million includes construction management as the owner's
Oh,
rep, so
correct.
that's
That is-
outside of the 8
Yeah, you're correct.
months.
Yes, ma'am. You are correct. I don't know if you guys if you've said about how you're really going to pay for this, but we've done this industrial parks like this very similar with other communities, and they create like whenever a developer's going to, they do the whole plans first, so the plans are ready, and the zoning and everything else, so all the entitlements are there, and all they have to do is come in and build, and we would make them build their section of road in front of their properties. Any extension of water and sewer, they would build it. And you would do your best to go start from the north side and go to the south side. That's a possibility for you guys to do. I don't know if you're interested in doing those things, but if you don't have 13 million, you gotta get a little creative.
What's your estimate as to the difference in cost per mile or whatever of street that would cost, rather than do, obviously it'd be cheaper to do it all at once.
It is.
What premium would you put on it if it was done piecemeal?
Well, I would probably tell you
Is
it's
it
gonna be about
ballpark?
30% higher in
30%.
cost. And most of it's gonna be mobilization. And then obviously, if it takes a longer time to do this, the prices are still gonna be going up, but it's gonna cost more, but I mean, if you wanna try to push it off on a developer. And a lot of them are very happy because they come in and they have their entitlements. All they gotta do is build, and they're done. So it's very lucrative to them now that they deal with all the other stuff.
Yeah, and if the far lot sells first, then how do you get there? It's always a problem.
Mr. Zek, isn't there always a proportionate share that can be, if BEDC spends the funds to build the road, there's a proportionate share that the engineer's speaking to that piece of property that can be figured into any of the incentives. Is that correct, as a part of the deal? Somebody comes and wants to buy, it's shovel-ready, and what we've been doing in the past is they purchase the land, and then there's a way for them to get that money back. They can, in that purchase, we could include a proportionate share of the road and utilities, right?
We can negotiate anything that we like to negotiate.
Yeah, we can do per acre charges or per linear foot of frontage. There's a lot of those things out there. And we can help y'all create those.
Yeah, I think I would be interested to see what like you pointed out, there's construction engineering and other things in there. What would be the estimate to achieve design-ready drafting or the engineering to be design-ready to then take the next step forward to construct?
I think our design, I think I have it scheduled for 8 months. I think that's what
And how much money for that?
That's the 1.9. No, I'm sorry, you gotta deduct it.
That's why I want
Yeah.
to take a look at that to see what it is, because I think where we are on our budgeting and where we're looking at is the first step would be to have the full designs made and paid for.
Okay.
At that point, and then take a look at when is the timing to turn around and have, let's say, pull the trigger on going into that phase, or going into it in 2 phases, or if we want multiple steps if we want to.
Our construction phase services was $310,000.
So you're saying 310 outs, and you're about 1.5, 1.6 million.
Correct.
So, but I have another question, because you have 7 easements at $17,500, and I believe that is doing the surveying to prepare the easements. And what it brings to mind, and this may be a Gene question, is I don't see platting, and there is no final plat for this. So is that platting included in your,
Yeah, the platting is included, but the platting is included in our first phase with Jackson Street.
the platting for the remainder?
Yes, ma'am.
Then why aren't the easements included there?
Because we haven't designed it, I don't really know where all the easements are gonna go just yet. I mean, until I know where exactly the water and sewer mains are gonna go, or until anything goes.
But won't the $17,500 be in the final plat and take care of the easements that
We're
way?
gonna have to resubmit a final plat when we finally get everything completed. We'll have to resubmit it. But we are turning a final plat in with the phase 1 of the Jackson Street. It's a requirement for us to do it.
But your final plats that you're turning in for Jackson Street is also taking care of the other roads?
Well, yeah, it's gonna show them, it'll show them on the map. So all the roads are gonna stay the same, but wherever there's easements or wherever there's other utilities are located, we gotta design all that for the new final plat.
Okay, I'm just trying to make sure that when we're done, we actually have a final plat for
Yes,
the
yes, ma'am.
entirety of the industrial park.
Yes, ma'am.
And so it was surprising that it's called out as 7 easements and not taken care of as a part of the platting process.
Well, I guess because I had the final plat already included in the first phase, I was just gonna redo that. I wasn't gonna charge anything. And the only thing I need is for my surveyors to get paid for whatever they have to do. So I wasn't gonna charge you additional fees to redo the final plat.
Okay.
And the final plat's a preliminary final plat, because if we end up designing consolidated drainage ponds and stuff like that, that
Yeah.
final plat may be a modified plat, modified then
And I
final.
think even as we get down further on, some new developer's gonna come out here and say, well, hey, we don't really like this, we wanna try and do this. And they're gonna have to probably replat their property.
Right.
So, I mean, I think you're gonna have a lot of variations of it by the time we're done,
But I think if, as much as we can get fixed first round, I think would help for us to get
yes,
forward.
yes,
yeah.
yes, sir.
Sorry if I need a little more clarification here. Did you just say that to come up with the initial design, not to do the construction services and management, that kind of stuff, was $310,000? Is that what you said?
310 less.
310.
1.6 million instead of 1.9.
Thank you. That's
Well, it's called out on, I guess, page 42, because it's
Well-
engineering, design, and surveys, $1,460,903.
That's right.
And then $80,000 for geotechnical, $60,000 for subsurface utilities, and $17,500 for the 7 easements. If I'm understanding correctly,
correct.
those are what we need to add together to get to design
Yes, ma'am.
ready. So you're taking out the 310,000 of construction management. And you've got the 15% you're using not only as a contingency for construction, but a separate and additional 15% for your design.
Design, correct.
And again, Bill, that's something that we've already discussed in our budget workshop, correct? That
Yeah, the
1.6.
budget workshop, we had set aside $1 million to begin the build-out for the
For the
industrial
first
park.
year, for the first year.
The first
right?
year. So next year's budget has 1 million in it.
And that'll cover this 1.6 right here, both of those
Well,
2 years.
it'll cover 1 million of the 1.6.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
that's where-
it's on its way.
Okay.
And then we would just make a decision, we get into the budget, if we want to jack that up to 1.7 million.
Okay.
Because I think, like the mayor had said, 15% on top of that contingency would take a 1.8, 15, 220, 1.8
To-
million. 1.8 million is just with the 15% contingency-ish.
Okay.
Just quick math.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any other additional questions on the presentation? Okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay.
If you guys would like another proposal that has the construction out of it, I can get that to you.
If you don't mind, I think that'd
I
be a
don't
good
mind. I
idea.
don't mind at all.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to now move on to 3.7, discussion and possible action regarding the Main Street Program Agreement between the BEDC and the City of Bastrop. Just a little bit of background on that. We redid the agreement to be more in line with what we have already agreed to in the past several years and whatnot. The agreement was negotiated between our attorney, Charlie Zeck, and the city's attorney, Allen, and then was then given over to the city manager for his review as well, and it looks like it's been agreed to. So that's, in my opinion, that's a good thing. So we're pretty much finished with that one. And so we just need the possible action on that one, whether we do it with a resolution or just an okay for me to sign it, because the two signers would be myself as the chairperson and the city manager, Mr. Paul Hoffman. I guess we need
Need a resolution.
need a motion, I guess, to go ahead and get this thing signed, right?
Yeah, so I move that we sign it as written, if that's.
Second.
All right, let's, any discussion about it?
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, and after reviewing this and knowing what we've gone through to achieve this, I honestly don't believe the city or Main Street needs the $50,000 to complete. We're already into July without an agreement. This was to be done in September, was more than well addressed by Catherine. City manager changed that method, continued with extensive delays, non-engagement, and so forth. Now we're down to the last month and a half or 2 months trying to spend $50,000 or justify $50,000. And so, you know, based on how this has gone and where we are in the year, I don't see a major demand or no crying out for the money being needed for Main Street. I think Main Street's fine. And I recommend that we do not agree to this agreement in the way it's written in the date of beginning. And I would recommend you just delay the date until next year. It's a 2-year agreement. This year is a learning experience for all on how to reach agreements and make agreements together. So that would be my recommendation.
Any further discussion from anyone? And do you agree with what Bill's saying, or do you want to go ahead and get this completed? I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I know we've been working on this thing for months now.
We need to address the motion that's on the floor right now.
Well, we're in discussion point of that.
I understand.
Okay. So, any further discussion? All right, so if we have a motion on it, then all in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed?
I am opposed.
Okay, so we have one opposed, but the motion carries today. Thank you.
In further discussion, if the motion does carry, as a follow-up, how do you expect to qualify any requirements? Because at this point, the way the agreement's written, this should not be just a money transfer to the accounts like has happened in the past.
Well, what we've been asking for, if I remember correctly, is that Main Street personnel will come and give us their kind of report of what they've been doing for the year and how they're going to use it, how they're going to use the money.
So I recommend that we have an agenda item for next meeting, that the Main Street comes and presents what they have done and how they expect to spend the money, and then we have a look at how to justify transferring money to the Main Street based on, evidence and support with respect to advertising and so forth.
We can put that on the agenda for next month. Okay. Thank you. All right, we're moving on to 3.8, discussion, review, and possible action regarding all matters related to the BEDC's draft budget for fiscal year 22 and 23, including the possibility of approving the budget with or without changes, to be presented to City Council for inclusion in the City of Bastrop's overall FY23 budget.
Okay. As we look at the budget and the items that we had from the meeting minutes that we've already included, the two significant changes that have happened, or one significant change, comes on page 51. And if it's called expenditures by expense type, and in specific, it reaches the retirement line in the personnel costs. So we have been able to, the staff and Angela working with the city and HR have been able to get the positions loaded as we had indicated. And subsequently, the city HR did come back and upload the background information for the categories of longevity, Social Security, and the benefit side. What we do see is that the retirement has gone up from prior budget by 180.9%. So the change there from what we had before, I think we had close to 40. It's almost a $90,000 increase. It is based on what the city is doing with the employment and employment agreements in HR. So not a lot of change for us. A little higher than what we expected, but it comes across all for this. So.
That also includes the additional folks that are going to be hired too, right?
Yeah, all includes the additional folks. That's already included in the first line, which is 624,983. So that has not really changed from what we agreed to. It's only the retirement was the one that kind of surprised on the pickup. Okay. The other item that was pending and open related to the traffic study. So the traffic study was identified. We had that discussion about the traffic study. And with that, we were expecting or looking for a comment back from the retail coach. We do not have that yet. So from the budget side, we said we'd put 50% in. So right now we're at 50%. So we're either half right or half wrong. But for budget purposes, I think 50% is okay for now. And then if we need to modify, we can modify later. Okay. Along with that, the other item that we had was the projects that we wanted to have separated out from now on. So the technology drive and MLK infrastructure was $2 million. And then the technology in Jackson Drive, we've asked the financial reporting to separate those two. We expect those to be separated. That was $1 million for really Jackson Drive and $1 million to begin the build out. Due to the nature of those two projects, each project needs to be separated as individual line items, and I think we'll be able to get to that. They have different approvals, they have different timelines, and they have different justifications, so it doesn't make sense to keep those bundled. So that's the only other on the report. That total doesn't change, but will be specifically line itemed by the time we reach the final budget. Correct, Tracy? Okay, so every time we have a project going like this, we'll have separate line items in that. Not just a separate sub, but they will be individually listed. Okay, So Tracy has confirmed that with correct, so thank you. So with those modifications, from my overall point of view, I think we've done what we need to do to bring a budget together. Any comments or any additions or subtractions at this point, welcome to hear. The one item that is open, I think, is what we just heard from Doucette at 1.8, 1.6 plus, if they cover 15%, it's about 1.8. I think we're okay at 1 million, and then we could adjust it if we need to thereafter, or we end up waiting for the engineering to finish. A few months later, we can come into it, but open to discussions or what people feel.
Well,
Chair Spencer, one thing I want to clarify is from our workshop, I believe what we agreed to was that the most important FTE to fill is the executive director, president, CEO, chief Humba, whatever we're end up calling them. Right. And I know in the bylaws right now it's a CEO. But that person is the highest priority hire, and then they'll decide, because we want them to be responsible for their own staffing. So that may delay when an FTE comes on or how many FTEs there are. There's at one of our other agenda items, we're going to be talking about the possibility of co-locating. That may change administrative help that's maybe shared. Mm-hmm. So to me, it's more of like, because that number feels fairly high, $1 million for an organization that takes in $4 million a year. You know, I guess I'm rounding up with the salaries. We were at $850,000, and then we've added the $60,000 for the retirement. So I'm just kind of rounding up to saying that that's about $1 million. Yeah. And I know that when the community agreed for the half-cent funding, the idea was for that money to go back into economic development, mm-hmm. and we don't want to create a administratively heavy organization, but we also want to give the CEO all of the flexibility that person's going to need to adequately complete the task ahead of them.
And I think, I mean, that's a good point you bring up. I mean, we have been resources short for a long period of time. We've talked for years now about getting a full staff on board. And so I think we all understand that when the new CEO gets hired on, there's going to have to be flexibility on, is that number 6, is it 7, is it 4, is it 5? I mean, we need to have that person make that decision, but we all, I believe, agree that we need to have more staff. We need to make sure that the staff we're not filled right now. We are so shorthanded right now, it hurts. So, I mean, I understand what you're saying, and I think that's a salient point. There's going to have to be flexibility in these types of things. So I don't have any problem with that myself.
And I think we're just confirming what we talked about in the workshop. But if you look at, if somebody hadn't paid attention to that workshop and you're looking at the budget, it looks like we're automatically having 8 people starting October 1st, and I don't think that's
okay. And if anybody in the public has a question, they can obviously ask the staff and get an understanding of what it is. It's basically a placeholder. So we all know that everything is going up in this world, and I can't overstress this enough. We in the BEDC are incredibly understaffed right now, and so we have been talking about getting more staff members for years. We're on the road to do that, and yeah, these are placeholder numbers right now. They're pretty close, but if we need to adjust it, especially with the new CEO coming on, I don't think anybody's going to have an issue with that, but they can call me if they want to, or call the treasurer if they want to. I'm putting you on the spot, Bill. All right, so if we're pretty much in agreement, then I'd like to go ahead and give this to the city, and let's go ahead and present it as our budget. And I would also further like to say that when the city has their meeting to approve this budget, that the treasurer of Bill goes and does the presentation to the city during that meeting. So if there's any questions or anything, since he's one of the main architects, obviously, of it, that he has the opportunity to present. So I guess we need a motion to present it to the city council for inclusion. Is that correct?
Move to approve the budget as presented.
Second.
Any discussion? Good. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, say nay. Motion carries. Thank you very much. Good, good, good. Okay, we are now going to go into session 4, the workshop. The BEDC board will meet in a workshop for a presentation from BEDC consultant Steve Weathers about proposed updates to the BEDC strategic plan and to gain input from the board regarding those updates. Hello, Mr.
Okay.
Weathers.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the time, and we can do this right here, right? Okay, so this is going to be really a two-way dialogue. One of the things I would ask you all have a copy of this plan. It is a first draft. There's a lot of gaps in it. It will change and evolve. If you have some specific things that you want and you don't mind, you can always put your name on the cover, make your notes in there, hand it to me. That way I have the exact comment, and I'm not doing it secondhand. And then I can also contact you and say, hey, Bill, I couldn't read your handwriting. You know, what about this right here? Because it looks like you spelled the word peacock, and I know that's not what you meant. So anyway, that's an inside joke. So anyway, any questions before I go through this? I'm not going to go line by line, but I am going to go kind of in depth here to make sure we have good dialogue. But any questions before we start? Okay. Okay. So I'm going to jump to page 2, objective and methodology. I'm just going to jump down to, so what I've used in, again, putting this together is the strategic plan from Garner Economics, which you guys have had copies of, the policy regarding Bastrop Economic Development Corporation, and the budget workshop 22 you just had, the strategic alignment report, and then also using some, reading through the bylaws to kind of make sure this all fits within what the organization can and is allowed to do. The next section there, and I wanted to get your input on this, much like the strategic alignment document, today we're talking to the board of directors. Actually, tomorrow at 10 a.m. I meet with the city manager, and I'll gain his input, really primarily on the city policies, but anywhere he wants to comment on this also. So what I'm thinking about is meeting with all the other strategic partners I met with before. It's your strategic plan, but I know when I've done this in the past, I try to get as much input as I can, but again, it's your plan. So what are your wishes there? Good idea, bad idea, like it, don't like it? My feelings aren't hurt. I just need honest input of what you'd like.
My opinion on this, I mean, you've got a good group of folks here that you want to talk to, and I think it's to get other people's inputs and ideas on the strategic plan. I think that's fine. It's nice to hear what other people might have to say about it or give their opinion about something. A lot of it's going to depend really upon the different folks' schedules and whatnot. I mean, I see you have the mayor and the city council. Obviously, it's going to be up to them and their schedules on if their ability to meet.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to address some of that at the end here because we have next month's supposed to be a joint meeting. There's a whole other discussion. So
okay, all right.
When we get to the end, I'll kind of go through that, but that's a good
okay.
point.
All right, thank you.
Okay, and I think
Mr. Chair, I have a question on that, if I may, before you continue. What are we looking to gain from visiting with the Bastrop County elected officials?
strategic partners. I may gain something, may gain nothing. It may be something that they want or think something should be included, which maybe this organization can't do, technically, legally. But I guess I've just always been a person, when I do something like this, I'd rather outreach and gain more information than less. And it's a small county, it's a small area. So we don't have to meet with them, I don't have to. So I'm kind of here to ask your direction. If you don't think that's a good idea, I can take that off.
We actually have agreements working with the county on one of the development projects that entails activities in the business park. And additionally, companies do come to us in development of ideas and projects that are in the county and not in the city specifically that we support. So even though we are the city itself, I think from an economic development point of view, we actually do have a little bit broader view of things that we can support or not support within the county that is not specifically in the city, but the city highly benefits from. So I think it was a good idea as well to reach out to the county, especially when we looked at the discussion with the county that we had about the development on the industrial park. It seemed very highly, let's say, segregated and separated in ideas, and there wasn't much outreach to the county. So I think in general, I think it's a good approach for input.
Yeah, and the two, I'm going to meet with the same two individuals I met with for the strategic alignment doc. So I'm not meeting with everybody, unlike city council, so people that represent the city, and then their economic development tourism person were the 3 people I was planning on meeting with.
That's kind of what I was looking for.
Okay,
Thank you.
okay, thank you.
And so when you're meeting with them, basically you're going through the plan, I'm assuming, and getting their thoughts or input. And so therefore, when the plan is actually published or agreed upon, it's not catching anybody by surprise.
Right. In fact, one of the things I don't have in here now, and you saw in the strategic alignment report, would be up front there somewhere an acknowledgement page of basically a statement, and then here's all the individuals that contributed to the plan. So the idea is this really isn't Steve Weathers' plan. This is everybody else's plan. This is your plan. This is what we have here. You've kind of combined to put together. Okay. Okay, then the little last line there, some of you have probably used this in the past, but I thought it was good to include it. It's basically setting up the goals here under the SMART method, which are, their goals are specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So it's kind of a standard format recipe. So if you look on every one, there's a standard kind of a way that we're doing that, okay? The background, page 3, I'm not going to really cover. That's just a lot of background. I will look at page...
Mr. Chair, I have
Yeah.
a comment on the 4th paragraph there. Rather than stating it's city manager drafted, I'd prefer to see the elected body of the city discuss and approved the policy regarding Bastrop economic development. It
Okay.
sounds much better from a policy standpoint.
Now, I've made a note, but also, if you want to make a note and give me yours, I'll make sure that is in there.
I will send it to you.
Okay.
And one other issue is on the 6th paragraph where it says achieve the economic goals of the city. Should that not read economic development goals of the city of Bastrop?
I'm trying to find where you are on there.
Just above where
Yep.
it says outlined, the task outlined in the statement of work.
It says BDC and the economic goals of the city of Bastrop? Yours doesn't say
It
that?
says to achieve the economic goals. I believe it should be economic development goals.
Okay. Okay, there you go. Okay. Thank you. That's what I'm looking for. Okay, we'll make those changes. On page 4, again, we'll talk about this thing. This kind of goes through the steps. We've already gone through the first review. We're now here at the 18th. That's you see that item there second. The 4th, I'm going to talk about this joint workshop because some things have come to my attention where that may change up a little bit, and we need to kind of go through that. And then I'll drop to the last paragraph there about the review. This is one of the goals I put in there. To me, strategic planning is somewhat like budgeting. It's a plan, but it's something that is a living document. It changes, it evolves. You start with it day 1, and even a year or 2 later, it's kind of changed to fit what's going on in that environment right then. It's not a static item. So this is one of the goals I put in there for this to be kind of a regular review at the leadership level, okay? Page 5, I don't know if any of you gave this any thought, but I could not find a vision statement for the BEDC, so I actually just drafted one myself. This is just me putting that in there. Again, I think you've used the term placeholders, what I have here. And we can go through this. You can send me your thoughts. Sometimes these discussions get to be really, really long of what the vision is. So we can do that if you like, or again, we have some time to kind of go through that. This is the current mission statement. Again, you can leave it, change it. This is what's on the website. But
Why is a vision required? I've been through this in corporate. You know, if you need vision, then generally, I don't know, it's
Amen.
it's
I'm with you.
superfluous. There was a reason we had this discussion, and when we met a year and a half ago or more, vision was not required.
Okay.
And so I would not necessarily want to go backwards again and start having visions.
Okay.
I think we just stick with mission
Okay.
and stay focused on a mission and drive that mission.
Yeah, because I think I had that in my cover note. This is one you can add, change,
Yep.
delete, whatever you
So
like.
from
okay?
my opinion, I would say, let's drop the visions
out?
and let's
Okay.
just try and succeed on a mission.
Okay.
And
Okay.
Mr. Gossett, as I recall, we tried to get the mission statement down and not be a huge paragraph and broadly cover things and something that can stay the mission for a number of years.
Keep it concise.
And the other thing is, I'm not sure what version this is, because one of the things we said we don't need in the mission statement is the word "the mission statement." So the mission of this is, it says, the mission statement is, the Bastrop Economic Development Corporation is to be a driving source. So the mission of should not be in the mission statement. That's painfully redundant,
yeah,
and I
this
think
is-
we killed that last time.
Yeah, this is how it is on the website.
I understand,
yeah.
I'm just going back to, we painfully went through this and said that the mission
Okay.
statement doesn't have to have the mission in it.
So I'm going to be, actually, I'll be over in the office tomorrow. I'll meet with the staff, and I'll talk with the staff because they probably have more history, so they can help me kind of recraft that, if you like.
It's just
Okay.
delete the mission of. That was the only part. We went through that. The last thing we said is the mission statement doesn't have to have the mission of.
Okay,
It's just painfully redundant,
okay,
so.
okay. Page 6.
I'm sorry, I'm going to stir this up again.
That's okay.
I have an issue, and y'all can provide me clarity on it. The growth of the Bastrop community, I think it needs to be geared more toward the city. I realize it's our current mission statement, but I think it needs to be geared more toward the city. Is anybody else have any thoughts on that?
Well, the only thing I'll say is that we are pretty much Bastrop City centric and focused on everything we do, but we do have the ability to kind of go outside of it. So to me, community really is more of a encompassing term than just the city, if you looked at just the city by itself, because we do have the ability to go outside that. And some of our projects have indeed gone outside of that. So I understand what you're saying, but to me, community may actually be the right word because it's more, it kind of goes outside the confines of the city limits or the ETJ.
I agree with that, but I think the city of Bastrop and impacted or associated areas would probably be more descriptive of what EDC does.
So if you like, I can take a stab at maybe redrafting this to include your thoughts and your thoughts.
I think we go back to the discussion that we had a year and a half ago, where community really came from, is that it looked at, again, trying to be concise in what that community was. I think the other part of what that represents is the economic development in the city of Bastrop, especially when you look at the retail coach data and all of that. It's a substantial draw into the city of Bastrop. And part of that development is drawing people in from outside the city to come in and spend their money and do the activities of Bastrop, and even things like the rec center, the library, and other city functions have specific rates and charges for out-of-city persons who come to the library, the rec center, and so forth. And that's why the emphasis that we had at the time was looking at just a simple statement of the community of Bastrop and let individuals kind of look at what does that really mean. It could be the county, it could be the city, but I think our efforts are really broader than just city folk and people that are inside the city and the development specific to the city, because we actually help out on ETJs and some of the others. So that's why we just chose that one word as community and kind of cut the wordiness of it.
You may think about something like and sustain the economic growth of the city of Bastrop and the surrounding community. Okay. 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 Okay.
We're really not here to change the mission statement. I mean,
know.
comments are great, and
Yeah.
we can work on that at some times.
Okay.
But this,
Yeah.
right now, we're just not here to create a new mission statement.
Okay. 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 So page 6, I just did kind of a high level outline of here's what the goals are, and I'll go into those. And that the top statement there really is meant to capture and deliver on the vision, or I should say, I guess, vision of the city of Bastrop, because that does say that, and the board of directors here, and then the strategic mission of the BEDC team. So I went through these goals. Really, again, are for the board and for the staff, and I'll just kind of go through these and kind of we'll talk through these. So for the board, obviously, and Mayor mentioned it earlier, kind of your top priority, recruit a new chief executive officer. And so I didn't really, you all know about that, but you've already hired a search firm. I put this sort of format of a point person as the board chair. The staff supports it. The timing is trying to accomplish this no later than the fourth quarter of 2022. And then the cost, and these are really, again, kind of placeholder numbers, and I can work with the treasurer on maybe tightening these up as we go down, but I wanted to make sure we had something in there so somebody knows, is there a cost to whatever this strategy or this goal is, okay? So that's just kind of an estimated number. Create an onboarding process, and really this came, I'll credit the city manager. We talked a lot about this when we went through the review of how there's an onboarding for council members, and I thought that's a good idea. I've done this in other organizations where I have an onboarding process for board members because they typically come from, like all of you, other industries, They don't know economic development. And within the first month, the staff sits with them and really goes through what is this thing, the Economic Development Corporation, the bylaws, how does it work, what is your role, what is your responsibility. They get to meet the staff, kind of go through what happens. And I've included in there also, meeting with some of the city, having the legal counsel involved, just making sure that when a new board member is appointed, they have a real idea of what this is, okay, and what it kind of entails and what their role is, okay? So there's really no cost involved, but I put the CEO as the point person in the staff. So this is really something the staff would do in really supporting the board.
I would like to add BEDC staff and BEDC legal counsel, because they're, Mr. Zek has a phenomenal, he's well recruited to provide to board members. How are you a good board member? And here are the things that you need to be aware of from state statute with economic development corporations. Mr. Zek, you always have the largest audience, and I think understanding the legalities and the ethics and what you can do and what you cannot do and how it's not a standard nonprofit is really one of the most important things.
Okay, so I'll add that into the support line.
It's in there.
It's
It's
in the
there.
statement.
It's in there on page 7 on
Well,
the
it's just mentioned, and I'm saying that on
Yeah.
the support, instead of it just being BEDC staff, I would
Yeah.
like it to say staff and legal counsel.
Yeah, so I can leave it in the statement, but also I'll add it on that line item.
And while I have the mic, back on the whole vision of the city, and the goals of the Economic Development Corporation should be aligned to the policy that council's given that's a great place to reference it, and that gives us another tie. And that would keep you from having all the words of deliver on the vision of the cities. We can just reference the policy is a suggestion.
Okay. Economic development training for board members. I think I mentioned this before, kind of in the strategic alignment document, with the idea is there are courses on economic development. Somebody comes into this and they come from another world, and economic development is kind of a different world. And actually there's a course provided by IEDC. I know they've done 3 this year. They'll do the 3rd one in November. They do it in Texas. It's about a 3-day kind of thing, and it really gives, I've had other board members go to this, I've had other CEOs I've talked to around the country, they send their board members to things like this, just so they have an idea of what is this word economic development, okay? And it gives them kind of a good handle on it. So again, just something to kind of think about and consider.
And is there a Texas Economic Development Corp as well?
There is, I don't know, I couldn't find a training course from them, not saying they don't do it.
Okay.
I
So
go-
it could be IEDC or TEDC.
TEDC.
Do they?
And then the other one, and again, Mr. Zek has been a speaker a number of times, the TML has an economic development course, and it's right here at
Municipal
Lost
League?
Pines Hyatt, which
Okay.
is drivable
Okay.
and
Yeah.
a day and a half course, and that would be a really good, way less expensive.
So one of the things so you all know, I've asked the staff to take copious notes, so when I meet with them tomorrow, those are the kind of things we'll start to work into draft too, so we'll add in.
The other thing
municipal
that's
league
really,
and
really good about the TML conference is that it's almost always in November, and appointments are made, and people start in October, and so in the middle of November, they could be at the TML EDC conference that's at the Hyatt Lost Pines. So the timing's good, and it's a fast way to do that. Nobody has to fly anywhere or drive long way.
Okay, good idea, okay. Board performance. So this is something, I don't know if this board's ever done this before. I don't know enough of the history, but I know what I've had with boards in the past is there are self-assessment evaluations you can do, and what these are really documents that you fill out as a board, and it talks about things, do you feel that you're being heard at the board meeting? Are your points being heard? Are board members engaged? Are the staff engaging you in what they're doing? Do you feel there's good communication? So it's kind of a subjective kind of assessment. These are things that you can do just to make sure, and again, being an appointed board, a little bit more public, is it something from a transparency standpoint, if I'm the citizen out here, yeah, we grade ourselves as a board. So I don't know, again, give that some thought. If it's something you want to pursue, again, this is something, it's more staff helps to kind of do this. This board's small enough, and I've had larger boards of 40 and 50 board members. What we typically do is we do it confidentially, where you do the assessment, it goes to the legal counsel, they kind of fill it out with no name, so when it comes back, people are very honest and open. Somewhat like I did with the strategic alignment document. I took all that in, but no names were shared, okay? So we got good, honest input, okay? Last one here, joint BEDC and elected city leadership workshops. This kind of goes to the point of this plan here, holding 4 of those twice a year or 2 every year, and just making sure everybody's on the same page, economic development-wise, what's happening here internally. Maybe not everybody sees it all the time, and so this is just something that I think, especially with the strategic planning, a new CEO coming on board, I think this will help support a new CEO, making sure that their leadership, both at the city and here, are on the same page, okay? So again, just something to kind of think about.
Mr. Weathers, and just for clarity, I have several notes here. I'm just going to provide them to you for your consideration. You can distribute to the rest of the body here, and rather than interrupting you continuously.
No,
Thank
perfect. Appreciate it. Yeah, that's why we're here. Okay, so then for the team itself, I kind of divided this into 2 phases. And phase 1 is kind of the rebuilding of it. You all know that. You mentioned earlier about being understaffed. So I'll talk a little bit about how do we rebuild this to really be a true economic development entity, and then moving more into more traditional economic development with some stretch goals. And then exploratory goals, I've done this in the past, and these truly are something that's just what it says. It's exploratory. It's for discussion. It could go up. It could go down. It could go nowhere. It could go somewhere. It's just ideas to put concepts out, so you're always evolving and progressing and becoming better and better and better. I'm sort of I look at improved performance. How am I always trying to improve that performance? Whether it's physical exercise, mental exercise, whatever it is. How do I perform better, especially being a public entity, more public, showing yes to the citizens here. We're always for process improvement, making sure we're performing better. So the first one here. And the mayor mentioned it earlier, and this is the priority, I think, fully staffing the organization. So once the new CEO is on board, is really then working with the current administrative staff to really give that person probably about a full year. I don't think, you have your budgeted number, but I don't think you said earlier about October 1. Yeah, they're not going to start and 2 weeks later have a full staff. So that's going to take a while for them to figure that out and do a needs assessment. It's in the budget. You'll see at the end I kind of put a staff structure based on what's in the budget and, kind of my thoughts, but that doesn't mean that's what's going to be. It could be bigger, smaller, who knows what the new CEO wants. The 850,000, I just pulled out of the budget. That can change. We know it's not final, so I'll work with the treasurer on that before we kind of put any final levers. Okay, so yeah. Becoming the economic development subject matter expert. This is one of the things, and I think, Mr. Chair, you mentioned it before, and the treasurer's mentioned it. This is an entity here that really should be looked at as the go-to body for everything economic development. And one of the things I know I've done with teams in the past is I structure it to where I have a staff person, and they're the expert in a certain industry sector. Let's say it's film. You have a film student. They know everything there is to know about that industry. They're also the experts, say, in permitting. So when somebody walks in the door and has a question about permitting, we have a staff person that knows everything there is to know. If somebody walks in and asks about film, we have a person that knows everything they need to know. When I first started in this business, my 2 areas of expertise were life sciences and aerospace. I knew everything there was to know. I was the go-to person in my county. Everybody came to me. And I was also the person for utilities and for incentives. Now, I didn't really know anything about infrastructure, and I didn't know anything about, say, automotive industry, because we had other people do that. So this is one of the things that takes you to the next level, okay? And we'll kind of talk a little bit about what are those industry sectors and what are the areas where they should be experts, okay? So I kind of outlined that. I'm not going to go into all of that, but you get the idea. One of the ways they do that, attending council meetings, meeting with the department heads, going to training, attending educational conferences, things that make them that expert, okay? Page 10 here, strengthen a relationship with the city manager. This really goes, I think, to the CEO, and I kind of mentioned this in the strategic alignment document. I still think it's a good idea, once both these individuals are on board, that they meet on a regular basis. It could be coffee, it could be breakfast. It doesn't have to even be work. It's really building that relation, getting to know each other, knowing they have each other's backs. Sometimes when they're presenting and the city manager wants to present something, that person has the backing of the BEDC CEO, and vice versa. The CEOs here presenting something, the council or yourselves, they have the backing of the city manager. They need to really be, the way this is structured here, they need to be really tied at the hip and be supporting each other, okay? So I don't think there's really additional funding. It just really has to do with building the relationship. Strengthen the relationship with the business community, and this goes back to the Mr. Nelson, what you brought up, is the staff here, I think, although they're the City of Bastrop. They really should have really strong relationships with county, school district, Visit Bastrop, Chamber, businesses that are out there. You have a number of large businesses. Again, be the go-to, be that relationship person that's out there, okay? Implement the 9 priorities outlined in the city policy. I wasn't going to repeat everything in the city policy because it's long, so this is kind of a placeholder, right? It's probably going to change and evolve, but I am meeting with the city manager tomorrow, and I'm going to ask his help to kind of maybe help evolve this. You are appointed by the city. They have this policy here. I think those things are achievable and can be done. When you have a team to implement that today, I don't think you have a chance in heck of getting them done, but I think once a team's on board, those are things that can be accomplished.
The 9 focus areas are on that sign behind you, but that, we shouldn't confuse those with the economic development policy. Those are 2 different
Yeah, right,
documents.
right,
So
right.
when we implement the 9 priorities, it's 9 focus areas, and that's a separate document, but I'll let you guys work that out.
Yeah, what I went through and used was not that so much. It was right here.
Well, you refer to it as the 9 areas of
Right,
focus. will
that's the
generate-
9 that are here.
Yeah, those are the 9 that are on the wall over there. There is a separate document that is the economic development policy.
Right,
And
right,
it
right.
references some of those, but again, it's just kind of some semantics, and I'm sure when you visit with the city manager, you
Yeah,
guys can clean
I'll
that
have to
up.
use a different word, because here it talks about coordination, accountability, administration, BDC performance, strategic planning, metrics, priorities, which aren't that, so it's, I think, again, semantics. It's kind of have to use a different term there, okay? So we can do that, okay? Relocate to City Hall, I have on here. This one we've talked about before. Again, the way the structure is here, and I've talked a little bit at the city manager, I think the organization currently is out of sight, out of mind. I think being somehow closely more tied into the city is something that should be explored, because you are the economic development organization here, you are the go-to. If this did happen, again, I don't know the cost here, but I think it should be shown prominently that the BEDC is, say, in this building. Because right now, other than walking up to the front door, I don't think you know where their office is. So in my experience, economic development groups, you want them to be highly visible. They're your marketing group. They're your group out there. Whether they're in this building or not, they need to be in a place where the lights are bright and you know there's the economic development entity.
Well,
Okay.
You know, I understand the need to talk about this, but frankly speaking, in most of the communities around here, they're not in the same city hall. When you go to Taylor, when you go to Georgetown, when you go to others, some of them are, yes. But, I mean, it's interesting. A lot of it depends on what the lease is and is there room actually to do something like that. So, I mean, it's an interesting conversation.
Yeah, and actually, Chairman, you bring up a good point. One of the things, I'll make a note here, the new CEO maybe would explore some of these other offices around the state and then be able to come back to this body and say, you know, I've kind of looked around like you've said. Here's some that are do really well. They're next door, they're across the street, they're over here. But again, they're a standalone, they're very visible in what they do. They're not just in a building, right? So that's a good idea.
We could certainly talk about moving the office to the larger space, maybe in downtown.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that, I'm just commenting on what he was saying. I mean,
right.
as far as looking at what space we have, where it's located, how it's advertised, if you will,
Right.
the signage, so people know exactly where it is. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Stretch goals. Okay, so again, this phase 1 is kind of getting the organization fully staffed, up and running, really becoming the machine it can be. And then the stretch goals are a little bit more traditional, creating and implementing a marketing communication plan. If this new CEO does a staff assessment, feels that a director of marketing and communications is part of the team. This is kind of a little bit about what they might be able to do and really marketing the area through social media, all the different platforms, traditional media, whatever it might be. Create and implement a business retention program. Depending on which statistics you believe, anywhere from about 85 to 95% of all new jobs created are somebody that's already in the area. It could be a restaurant, it could be a service company, it could be a manufacturer, and it's a much more affordable way to create jobs, helping local people expand, versus trying to go somewhere and bring somebody in. It's a very expensive proposition, and that's usually the minority of job creation. They do get big play when they're big companies. That's happened here recently. You've seen those things happen. But that's a very expensive proposition. And the thing is just making sure, are your local companies really happy and are they growing and thriving, okay? I do have targeted business attraction, and on that, it would really be using the Jay Garner plan and trying to focus. That plan, it's a good plan, but it's so big for this size of a community. There's probably going to be 2 or maybe 3 that you say, that's our proactive. And the way I look at things, having been in sales a long time, is I look at the proactive and the reactive. The proactive is when I make a call to you. The reactive is when somebody else calls me. I won't turn the call down from Geico Insurance, but that may not be my target. My target might be something over here. So that's kind of how I distinguish these things right here, okay? And again, the money on there, that's just kind of a shot in the dark, just to put a big number out there. If you're going to do that, it does cost funds. The exploratory goal, I put this in there just based on my past experience. I've managed revolving loan funds before. They're small business loan funds. They co-lend with banks. So we have a restaurant owner here. They want to go to the bank. They're going to expand and do something. They need a $500,000 loan, and the bank says, well, that's great. We'll lend you $400,000 based on these parameters. Well, could this loan be the other $100,000 to make that work? And then that restaurant owner creates 20 more jobs, 30, 50, whatever it might be. So they're always a co-lender in the ones I've done. They can be very successful. They're typically service business, small business, a lot downtown. You're not lending to the boring company. You're not lending to the film studio. You might want to, but you're not big enough. And these loans are typically $50,000, $100,000, $200,000. They could be more. Women, minority, small business. I kind of put an example of, hey, do you make these loans structured into the way that if you locate your business downtown and fill the vacant space, that's what we're looking for. If you go somewhere else, maybe that's not so much, okay? Banks love these because banks can do more business with credit that's kind of right on the edge, okay? And there are ways to fund these things, okay? And again, I just put a number out. The last fund that I ran was a $20 million fund. We have about 60 loans outstanding. It's a great job creation tool for us, and it was really only lending to people in our community. You mentioned earlier, would it be a city only? You could do that. It's really up to whatever you want to do, okay? Staff, I tried to integrate what I thought would be the staff that was asked of me last time. What do you think? So I kind of put down a couple of VPs in business development, marketing. I did put a loan fund person in here, operations and administrative, and then I kind of worked some of the language in based on what I saw in the budget, okay, with a project assurance person, and then workforce, concierge, facilitator. So this is really something the new CEO will determine what that's going to be, and they'll take that time to do that, okay? So this, again, is kind of just a placeholder based on what you have in your budget for 7 people. Okay, that's kind of where I came up with that number. Next steps. I'll take your input. I'll work on that. I'll start talking to the other individuals or try and get their input. The joint meeting. According to the scope of work, we're going to have a joint meeting with City Council next month, and in talking with staff and with the city being in its budgeting process, from what they've been told by the city, the earliest that meeting could take place is sometime in October. So we can do that if you like, or what we could do is we could think about, much like I did with the strategic alignment document, I can come back here, I thought about the week of August 15th, schedule meetings, because they do take a while to schedule, with all the council members, and just go like I did before and kind of get their individual input on the plan. So by the time that's done, I've had all council members covered, I've had all of you covered, I've had the partners covered, kind of that list, and I've been able to integrate all that in. And then I would say, we get to say a third iteration, but before you really approve it, whoever your new CEO is, they have to own this thing. So they have to read it and either tear it up and throw it away, which I'd hate to see them do it, but that's okay, my feelings aren't hurt. Edit it, change it, add things, because they really need to own this. Again, it's great for you to want to own it and have input, but the CEO really needs to get emotional about this and be part of this, okay? And you can't sort of force it on them. So that's kind of my last comment there. Thoughts, comments?
So October was the closest group meeting we could have with City Council? October was the
That's what I was
closest?
told by staff.
Okay.
I just talked to them, and the staff told me they had talked to the city, because I think there's a rather long budgeting process, and they said the earliest they could do a joint workshop with the mayor and council, well, mayor's here, but with council would be October. So I'm just trying to stick a little bit more to the timeline we've laid out versus trying to just let this stop for 2 months and then picking up.
Yeah, and I guess one one thought about this is that we're gonna need to be flexible, looking at your, month 4, month 5, that kind of stuff, because of what's going on with the budget. We're gonna be having, September comes up, we have, 3 different positions here up for renewal. We've got, hopefully, by that time, there'll be a new city manager. We're looking to get a new CEO. So a lot of these things, in my opinion, we're gonna have to be flexible in maybe moving some of these around. I agree with you, we don't want to push it too far, but a lot of these things have a lot to do with the new people coming on board. We may very well have new board members here. So I think we just need to be cognizant that there's changes coming up here during that time frame right there. Okay?
Yeah, and I'm here to work with whatever your schedule is and just kind of keep it moving along. So I'm just kind of throwing ideas. That's maybe one way for us to, I can meet with individuals and at least continue to take input in.
I
okay?
have concerns with, I'm happy for you to meet with council members individually. The problem is council acts as a body, and no one council member, myself included, can speak for council. We have to have a vote and a resolution to speak as a whole. And so if we're having individual meetings and then that ends up influencing a document, it's almost like it can become a walking quorum concern as well. So I just want us to be careful about how much of an influence. It's one thing for somebody to review a document. It's another thing of, well, I heard this from this council member and this from this Mr. Zek, do you have comments?
Well, now I did the same thing with the strategic alignment. I met with each council member individually, and that didn't seem to. And I don't plan to use their names. I just wanted to make sure I got their input. However you want to do this.
Mr. Zek, did you want to make a comment?
I'm not comfortable sending it to each individual board member and having each individual board member then giving their opinions on and suggestions on changes and revisions.
Okay. Okay, so we'll put that off. We'll put that off.
Okay, so maybe having a workshop then, to a joint meeting, we can then talk about it and whatnot.
And it's exactly to your point of the 3 major things that are going to happen in the next 60 to 90 days is a CEO for BEDC, a city manager for the city, and the approval of a budget that'll start on October 1st. And that's a lot of moving gears. And to your point, I think with some flexibility, we've got a workshop scheduled on August 16th, and I know we have a backup budget workshop. Maybe we end up being able to use one of those meetings, but it's kind of silly to meet the week before we're going to have a CEO on board. So we just need to, I think you summed it up great when you said we just need to be flexible, knowing there's a lot of things going on.
Yeah.
Okay.
In the interest of flexibility, our hope is that we'll have a CEO by October, and that's at the same time we're talking about a joint workshop with City Council. If we were hiring someone, we already knew it, and they were coming on in a few weeks or the next month, probably be worth waiting to have that joint workshop.
Oh, yeah.
So the CEO's on board,
I agree.
'cause we're only gonna do it
This
twice
is
a year,
your timeline, your plans, not mine. But what I can do is I can come back in August. I can give you kind of the iterations from all this input today, taking anything you have written or from the staff. And then I can also meet with the economic development partners and just kind of see what their thoughts are and kind of incorporate that. So then we're really down to input from the joint workshop and input from the CEO. And again, it's really got to be the CEO with the final red pen on this thing before you approve it, I think, again, just in my opinion. I think the CEO needs to come and present it to you and say, look, here's my plan. Here's what I'd like your support on, okay? And to council also, because you need the council's support. Okay?
Great, thank you
Anything
very
else?
much. Any other questions? Great, thank you
Okay.
so much. Appreciate it.
So we will get whatever from you whenever you want to give it to us, or we'll pick it up later, or however you want to do that, just so we make sure we're incorporating everything. Okay, guys?
Great,
Okay,
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right, we're going to be moving into section number 5, executive session. The BEDC Board of Directors will meet in a closed executive session pursuant to the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, to discuss the following. Number 1, Section 551.074, personnel matters, discussion on the CEO position. Number 2, Section 551.087, deliberation regarding economic development negotiations on Project Western Edge, Colorado Bend Project, Project Walk for Fame, Project Olive, and Project Sharp. We will then, after that, reconvene back into open session. Right, the time now is 7:15. We are returning. The Board of Directors will reconvene into open session to discuss, consider, and take any actions necessary related to the executive session noted herein.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye, adjourned. Thank you.